Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude and part number 4 of the Tamiya 1/48 scale Bf109 G6 in Swiss markings. Today, paint. Last time, in part 3, I left off with finalizing all of the primary construction of some of the smaller subassemblies and parts for the open and closed cowling assemblies. So for the actual aircraft itself, I've got the closed cowlings in place just to make it easier to paint, and I won't have to tape off anything on the inside. And as you can see, I've done some primer. I did a light layer of let's see, Mission Models white primer, and then I sprayed the outside edges of the wings, top and bottom, as well as the rudder and the landing gear doors. So that was done in insignia white because I didn't want a real stark white. And that is for the Swiss markings. So with that painted and while it's curing, I'm going to go ahead and start making some masks to paint the red on the wingtips and on the rudder. So I'm going to work on that for a little bit, and then I'll come back and show you what I've got. Okay, so I got the masks made. I just did that using Tamiya tape and used the dimensions from the decals to actually make everything. So for the red, I used Tamiya XF7. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take these masks off of here and hope it turned out. Oh yeah, that's cool. That'll work. A little bit of underbleed right there is the gap from the that's weird, so I'm gonna have to fix that right there. It's from the yeah, I didn't have that underneath there far enough, so I'm gonna have to fix that. But I'm pretty stoked with the way it turned out so far. So there we have it. Phase 1 of the paint job done. Again, I'm going to have to touch that up. So when I spray some insignia white on another part I need to spray, I will tape that off and fix it. But I'm really stoked with the way it turned out. So that part is done. So the next thing I need to do is start getting ready to paint some camo colors on top of this. Now that I've got the bottom color sprayed, which I don't know if I mentioned it, But depending on whose references you go by, the color for the bottom would either be RLM 76, which is kind of a lighter blue, or RLM 65, which is a little bit grayer and darker. And just to do something different, and since it's a Swiss aircraft and not German, I went with the RLM 65. Now, one thing to note is when I was looking at the instructions with the decal set, it indicates that on this aircraft, the under wing tips were not white like the top, but the same color as the rest of the bottom of the aircraft, which makes sense because if they got this thing already in German colors, which might be the 65 or 76 on the bottom, they would paint the stripes and not necessarily paint the white tips on the wings. Whether or not that's totally 100% accurate or not, don't know, don't care. That's the way I'm doing it. So I've got those parts. I've got the gear bay doors done. All that's done. So now what I need to do is I need to flip it over and I need to start spraying the base color for the upper camouflage colors. And the two colors that I will be using are RLM 79 and RLM 71. So Dunkelgrün and Sandgelb. Those are the colors that I could find according to some sources. So is it going to be 100% accurate? Don't know. Because there's always conflicting information when it comes to German aircraft. But these are pretty reliable, I think. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to lay down the Sandgelb. Then I'm going to freehand the Dunkelgrün. But first, I need to do some masking. I need to mask along the bottom edge so I don't get any paint on the RLM 65. So let me work on the masking a little bit and then I'll come back. All right, so I've got the RLM 79 on. So now, time to do the RLM 71. And what I'm going to be doing with this, I normally like to do masks, but I'm just going to do this freehand because I don't have really a way to make masks. But I also like doing it with freehand because I don't want to take a chance peeling this paint up. So mix up some paint, start spraying. For this one though, I will be using my handy dandy Neo for Iwata TRN1, which I can do real fine paint work with. So let's see how that works out. Okay, so before I start the green, you'll notice that I've peeled the paint off of, or the tape off of the wingtips. And the reason for that is, according to the reference photos I have, which I'll post here in just a second, the wingtips are not white, and it's very obvious that they're not white. So when I post the photo, you'll notice that you have the white stripe, red stripe, white stripe, and then the red portion with the white cross on it. Then the outside, very, very visible. The wingtip is not white, nor is it red. and judging in comparison to the rest of the fuselage, I'm going to have to assume that it is green. So here, take a look at the photo and see what you think. So with that in mind, I am going to start painting the camouflage. And here it is thus far. So I've got the green sprayed on. So I think I'm ready to start peeling paint off. So I'm going to start doing that and see what happens. And here's what it looks like with the paint, or with the tape peeled off. So I'm pretty stoked with the way it turned out. Except for I forgot to take this tape out right here. If I can get it out. So here it is. Got those out. So overall, I'm pretty stoked with it. Paint went down pretty well. Here's what it looks like here. Now, I will point out one thing though, and this is something I've discovered with the Mission Models paint that is kind of discouraging. As you can see, we've got some discoloration going on here, like some darker areas, and that is caused from the Tamiya masking tape. Now, I don't know if it's specifically Tamiya brand that's doing this, but I've never had this happen with anything else. So wherever the adhesive from the tape stuck, I got discoloration. So what I did is I went through and I oversprayed it with some RLM 65 just to kind of get rid of any of the sharp edges. So once I do the weathering, it probably won't be as noticeable, if noticeable at all. But I found that kind of discouraging. You know, I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to paint because I like to experiment with different things, trying to find, you know, good colors, ease of application and everything else. And there's always something with paints. It's just an ongoing battle. But anyway, I'm stoked with the way it turned out. The wingtips, as I mentioned, on some of the other models I've seen built of this kit, well, not this kit, but this particular aircraft, the wingtips have been painted white, top and bottom. But again, looking at the photo I posted earlier, it's obvious that the wingtips were not white on top. And the instructions for the kit itself specifies that the wingtips underside are the same color as the rest of the underside fuselage. So that's the way I went. And I kind of like it because it gives a little bit of different look instead of those stark white wingtips. So I'm glad my masking job worked out okay. So the stripes turned out pretty good. So with that, I'm ready to actually spray. Oh, and one other thing, I sprayed the cowling, the open cowling portion. I got that sprayed in a reasonable facsimile of what I sprayed there. It's not exact, but it's pretty close, and since it's going to be open, it shouldn't matter too much. So the primary painting is complete. So now we'll just be touch-up stuff, detail stuff, and then on to the decals. But before I do all of that, I'm going to spray a semi-gloss clear using Tester's Model Master Acryl semi-gloss to kind of seal the whole thing in, because this paint is very susceptible to for lack of a better term, burnishing. Just handling it will change the sheen and the color of the paint. So yes, everybody out there, told you so. What are you using different paint for? Told you mission model sucked. Whatever. It is finicky paint, and we'll see if I continue to use it frequently in the future. But for now, I'm going to spray a semi-gloss clear on here, which I would do anyway, to put the decals on. Not because, you know, they stick better or anything else like that, but I just want a uniform finish, and I want to protect it from any chemicals, which can also affect this paint. So yeah, there you go. So come back after we do that. So now I have all of the parts sprayed with semi-gloss. So now I just need to let everything cure up really good, and then I can start on the decals. I'm also going to have to pull these flaps off here and cut the tabs off, glue the parts to make them open in place, and then I can actually glue the flaps in place, you know, for good. And yeah, then I can just move along. As you can see, the flaps are in place there, so that entailed pulling the flaps out, which I had just barely tacked in there with some actually I hadn't tacked those in at all. I just slid them in place because they had some pretty large tabs right here, so I was able to use that to hold them in place to paint. So then I painted A26 and 27 with the RLM2 and glued those in place, cut the tabs off the flaps, glued those in place, touched up the paint on the ends with RLM2. So that part's done. The lower cowl parts for the open position, that's painted. The plate that goes across where the landing gear goes, those are painted. And then I've got all of this stuff painted. The open cowling, the rudder, I got a clear coat on everything. So now, including the propeller. So now I'm ready to actually start doing the decals. So I think that's where I'm going to end this video. Next time I come back, I'll start on the decals. So that ends part number 4. So next time, for part 5, we'll start out with decals. So, as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the Tamiya 148 scale Bf109 G6 and Swiss markings. So, if you have any questions, comments, hints, tips, concerns, general blabbing, put them in the comments section down below, and I'll get back to you when I can. So, until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.